I want to talk about the 2006 Chicago O'Hare International Airport UFO sighting. A lot of people out there, I'm sure, remember this thing, but the reason I want to talk about it is just to show you and to point out the ridiculous lying responses that we get from our officials sometimes when these things happen. Nobody's ever provided any answers. And again, there's a lot of interesting aspects to this case. I mean, this is at an airport. This is only 5 years after the 9/11 attacks, and yet there's no big deal made by the government with regard to this intrusion into our airspace. But anyway, I'm gonna read from a couple different things here. Here was an article that was actually written in 2013, remembering the O'Hare UFO sighting in 2006. That was published in the Chicago Tribune. It was by Ryan Smith. I will leave a link for this article so you can check it out for yourself. But anyway, it states, the city of Chicago isn't known as a hotbed of UFO activity, but O'Hare Airport is the home of one of the most publicized sightings of the last decade. A flying saucer-like object was spotted over Concourse C of the United Terminal in November 2006 by pilots, airline management, and mechanics. The incident, reported by a Chicago Tribune columnist a few weeks later, noted the object was first seen by a United ramp worker around 4:30 p.m. After that, a variety of witnesses said the object was dark gray and 6 to 24 feet in diameter. Some said it appeared as a spinning frisbee, while others said it wasn't rotating at all. All agreed the object was silent and appeared just below the 1,900-foot cloud deck until shooting off into the clouds and leaving a circular hole shape in the clouds. Said the one mechanic named John Hilkovich told a reporter, "But I know that what I saw and what a lot of other people saw stood out very, very clearly, and it definitely was not an Earth aircraft." A manager on Concourse B ran outside his office after hearing the report about the sighting on an internal airline radio frequency. "I knew no one would make a false call like that, but if somebody was bouncing a weather balloon or something else over O'Hare, we had to stop it because it was in very close proximity to our flight operations." The story was eventually picked up by many major media outlets and caused people to reconsider the idea of UFOs, though the Federal Aviation Administration and the airline refused to investigate the incident. The FAA dismissed the incident as a weather phenomena, and Dr. Mark Hammergren, an astronomer at Adler Planetarium, agreed, saying the weather conditions at O'Hare that day were right for a hole-punch cloud. And this is what Hammergren, this is a quote, direct quote from Hammergren. He stated, "It's something that occurs when a propeller or jet airplane passes through when you have uniform cloud cover and the temperature is right near the freezing point. They make liquid water droplets freeze and a hazy disk of ice crystals descends from a hole, and it looks like a perfect hole punched in the cloud." But for Center for UFO Studies scientific director Mark Rodiger, the possible alien craft that appeared in the center's own proverbial backyard remains a mystery worth exploring. He said, this is what Rodiger said, "It's an unknown object over O'Hare, and it's seen by official personnel, and does United or the FAA take it seriously? Of course not. They have zero interest, because UFOs can't exist. But how can you not worry about something hovering over an airport after 9/11? It doesn't make sense." Journalist Leslie Kean also wrote about it in her book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, and talked about it on the Colbert Report with Stephen Colbert in 2010, saying the government should investigate the O'Hare incident. "This thing was hovering over Chicago O'Hare Airport at rush hour," Kean said. "Lots of people saw it. The U.S. government never said a word." Okay, it's very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting that the United States government never said a word. Isn't that always the case, doesn't it seem? When these things happen. Let's think about this for a second. Now, I mean, it's amazing that, now the FAA comes out and states afterward, "Oh, it's just a weather phenomenon." Next question, that nonsense. They try to give, even though there was like at least a dozen people that saw this thing, and it was clearly metallic, and and then they card out the astronomer who has never done any kind of research whatsoever. These they always have to go to the person who doesn't do research. People assume that astronomers would know before anybody else, but in most cases they don't know. There's very few astronomers who are interested in the subject of UFOs. They're interested in looking through telescopes at the stars. There have been cases where there are astronomers that come out and say, yeah, they saw UFOs, but for the most part they don't. And you just look at the we have people like Neil deGrasse Tyson out there. Until he needs the proof. You ever see the statements that these astronomers make? A lot of times are absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, and the FAA not doing anything. It's just so. You realize that behind the scenes there had to be something. You would think that the Pentagon would have been interested in this. I'm certain that they were, but they're not going to talk to the public about it. But then again, like we've talked about before on here, the whole thing is what are you going to do? They can't do anything about it. They can't do anything about it. They have no control over what these things are going to do. They just don't. They can't. If they show up, what are you going to do? You fire at them with jet fighters? I mean, it's just not going to work. There's nothing the government can do, and this is a case of that. So what do? They come out and they just lie. It's a weather phenomenon, And so how many cases throughout the years? It's imagination. It's that person who saw that's a crackpot. That guy must have been drunk. Stuff like that. It's been like that for years. Of course, in recent years, things have changed a little bit. It'd be interesting to see what would happen now. Since 2017, now that the Pentagon has basically admitted that there are things flying around that they have they don't know what they are. At least maybe now something like O'Hare happens now. You might get a statement saying we don't know. At least you might get a statement now saying we don't know what it was. Even though. Many of us know what it is. We all know what it is. It's all common sense. It's common sense what it is. And that's what I want to talk about here a little bit. Common sense. A lot of people just don't have common sense. I mean, there's just some of the smartest people in the world don't have common sense when it comes to the UFO problem. They just don't. And I mean, if you were to do even a modicum of research on this yourself, you would see that there's definitely something to this, and there's been something to it for a long time. But yet, some of the smartest people that we have, some of the smartest talking heads you see on TV, who basically try to debunk this on a regular basis, the smartest people on the internet, the people like and who want to spend all their time debunking this whole thing. People like Mick West, for instance. Smart, but apparently no common sense. Neil deGrasse Tyson, extremely smart. Very enjoyable to listen to. When he's talking about the galaxy and the universe and black holes and all those things. But when it comes to the apparent obviousness of the presence here that's on Earth, I mean, he's nowhere to be found. He's talking like a fool. He sounds like a fool. I mean, there's just no common sense there at all. I mean, it's funny. I mean, you could, something shows up, and like a craft like this shows up, and a number of people see with their own eyes, or a number of people see a landed craft, and there's occupants walking around, and then there's proof there. And I mean, it doesn't take. It's not. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. I mean. That thing for instance, the thing at O'Hare, that was obviously not that from this planet. Who's ever operating that was not. It wasn't human technology. I mean, that was just another case on among thousands, thousands of cases. Another case added to the bucket, and you had a bunch of different eyeballs looking at it that saw it. And it takes off through the clouds, but yet we have this astronomer coming up, even though these people said no, they insist that no, it wasn't, it couldn't have been a weather phenomenon. It was an object. It's like there's this, regardless of how smart some people are, they just can't see the light here. They just can't see the light. I mean, you could find the dumbest, most uneducated hillbilly, living in the backwoods of Tennessee somewhere, and that guy would actually know if this kind of evidence was presented to that guy, he would say, must be aliens from outer space. Yeah, he would be right. He at least has the common sense to see, the obviousness of what's going on here. It's obvious. It's obvious. There's a presence here, but yet we have these games, that's played by the government officials over the years, played by by people who are basically willfully ignorant, like the Neil deGrasse Tysons out there. It's like it's a willful ignorance. Mick West is on Twitter if you follow this guy, right? He's on Twitter all the time, constantly trying to debunk the gimbal UFO, the Go-Fast UFO, the FLIR UFO. I mean, he's just constantly trying to figure out a way that they twisted himself in a pretzel, trying to debunk these kind of things. It's sad. It's sad. It's like, man, did you not look at the evidence here? Did you not read the books? Did you not read the reports? I mean, this is obvious what's going on here, dude. Okay, of course there's going to be, every now and then you're going to get something that will turn out to be prosaic, but there's just too many cases, man. There's too many cases out there. It's not prosaic. You can't find, it's not weather phenomenon. It's not not a bunch of crackpots. It's not a bunch of people who are, came stumbling out of a bar, bombed out of their gourds. It's not that, It's not misidentifications. These things are circular shaped. They don't have any wings on them. They don't make any sound, and they're metal, and they're flying around, flying around. There's people who've seen the beings. I mean, there's so much to this thing, yet people, smart people who apparently don't have common sense. Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't have common sense when it comes to this issue. It's willful ignorance. You can't say, you can't call it, you can't say that these people are idiots or, stupid. They're not. They're smart. These people are smarter than I am. Okay. But they don't have common sense. They just don't. And I guess, the O'Hare thing, I mean, that's just one of the things that, you throw in the bucket there, the way the government responds, they're lying. They're lying. The FAA, a weather phenomenon. Come on. The officials that come out with that statement, they weren't there. They didn't see it. It was these other people that saw it. But you're going to say it's a weather phenomenon. And then, people were afraid at the time. I remember seeing an interview, from the Chicago area at that time, where, the one guy comes out, he was afraid that, to show his face and give his name because he could get fired. That's how it was. Nowadays it seems like things are loosening up. That's a good thing. We are in the right direction there. I think that people now they could say what they saw without fear of being removed from their job. But that's how it used to be anyway. And I'm sure there's still people who feel that way, who feel scared that if they see something, they can't say anything, because if they do, then, they're going to get brought into an office and basically dressed down for making a public statement about seeing a UFO. But anyway, just yet another example, the O'Hare incident, another example of, something that's obvious that wasn't an object from another world, operated by extraterrestrials, and yet we have people who just don't want to accept that fact, and you get the official statements basically telling lies, and but anyway, yeah.